Welcome in everyone to episode 124 of the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damien here with Matt and David. And today we wanted to look back at how divisions look so far through the about a little bit over a month into the season and just kind of give us standings recap and how teams are looking and who's surprising and who's not. But before we get into that, Matt, how are you doing this week?
Doing pretty good. It's been a pretty good week. Watching some baseball. Fortunately, my team got rained out like 3 days in a row this weekend, so I didn't watch as much baseball as I wanted to. But watch some other sports too, just hanging out. Went to a minor league game the other day. That was a lot of fun. Been a good week. But how's it been going, David?
It's been going good, trying to watch the Cubs game every day and get to others when I can. But for the most part, I've been enjoying the baseball season. It's good to have things rolling, have some baseball to watch every day, and good to have a team that's over 500 and competitive right now. So I feel you though on the Braves. I have Braves on my fantasy team, and they kept getting rained out on me, so that was bothersome. But how you doing this week, Damien?
I'm doing all right. Had a good weekend just hanging out watching the NFL draft. It's always a fun time, and I feel like my team did a good job there. But excited to kind of look back at how the month has gone so far for baseball. It's been really interesting with the all the new rules in here and some players being injured and getting ready to make their comebacks and all that. So I'm pretty excited into to get into it. But you know, I know we'll get through here. Pretty quickly, but let's go ahead and start with the American League East. And we've mentioned the Rays so much and their 23-6 start that they've had coming into this episode. And then we have the Baltimore Orioles at 19-9, Toronto at 18-11, Boston at 16-14, and then the Yankees bringing up the bottom of this division at 15-15. So we'll go ahead and start with Matt. What are your overall thoughts on the AL East so far?
Well, my thoughts right now are that the Rays have been extremely good. They've been pitching well, they've been hitting well, and that's pretty much what you need to do. They have dealt with some injuries. Tyler Glasnow still hasn't pitched. Sounds like he's coming back pretty soon, so that'll be a plus for them. But they did lose Jeffrey Springs for the season due to Tommy John surgery, and then they're going to lose and then they missed some time from Zach Eflin, and I believe they sent Taj Bradley back to AAA, which was kind of a strange move because he looked really good at the big league level. But they've kind of been the story of baseball so far, the Tampa Bay Rays, and 23-6. The rest of this division, the Orioles, I think, have been off to a hot start. I don't know how sustainable it is because their pitching really has struggled. Grayson Rodriguez, though, has started to look a little bit more like he's getting comfortable at the big league level lately, which is really nice. And their bullpen has some really good pieces there. Felix Bautista and Yenier, I think is how you say it, Cano. Two relievers in the back end of that bullpen have been really, really good. And then you got Toronto with a great record as well, even though it still doesn't feel like they've hit their stride. The Red Sox are kind of what we thought they'd be. They're kind of a 500-ish team. And then the Yankees, man, they've really struggled. They've got a ton of injuries, but that's been a risk for the Yankees. We said coming in, like they've got to stay healthy because they're not a super deep roster, and a lot of their top guys have been injury prone in the past. I mean, you look at a Carlos Rodon who's on the IL. He's dealt with a lot of injuries in the past. You look at Aaron Judge. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. He didn't get injured the last couple of years, but in the past, you got to look at his injury history. And then Giancarlo Stanton, it seems like he's playing 100 games a year. So definitely a team that the Yankees. It's worrisome for them right now with how many guys they've got out, and going forward, we'll see what happens there. But definitely been a really interesting division so far.
Yeah, so I was perusing through the Yankees roster given this start, 15-15, the Yankees in last place. You don't usually see that. I'm thinking they're a little bit lucky to be in at 15 wins at this point. Um Judge being around as long as he has this season has helped, but he has a 32% strikeout rate, which is pretty elevated from last season. Um, and then they only have like 3 guys right now, maybe just 2 guys above league average in their lineup. After that, every hitter on their team below league average. You've got guys like Isaiah Kiner Falefa, Oswaldo Cabrera, Aaron Hicks, Willie Calhoun, throwing together WRC pluses in the 10, 19, 37. Like, I genuinely think that this team is starving for depth, and that's what's really costing them right now. Those guys aren't bad to have as bench guys, but you cannot be running a lineup out comprising of 5 guys with a WRC plus average like in the 30s or 40s. Like, you're going to lose the game. Um, it might be time to cut bait on Aaron Hicks. Might be time to cut bait on Kiner Falefa. Just those guys are just not contributing right now. Bunch of negative WAR. I mean, Hicks has been just brutally bad. So, for the Yankees, this is a depth problem, and it's one that can definitely be corrected. But you can see how competitive the AL East is and how quickly it could get away from them.
Yeah, it's that depth problem is going to be hard to correct though, because there's so many of them, and like at the beginning of the season, like we talked about, I mean, Judge was going to have to carry this team. Like Anthony Rizzo is still a really solid hitter, and but like other than that, like I mean, we were just talking about how the pitching staff and Judge is going to have to absolutely carry this team, and you just cannot afford any injuries. And I mean, that's what happened to him. This is just a flawed roster construction. I mean, outside of Garrett Cole I mean, it's just been kind of a disaster so far for them. And the fact, like you say, the fact they're 15-15 with the roster they're running out there, I mean, that number's going to go down because they haven't been missing Aaron Judge very long. He's only missed a few games so far. He's going to miss a lot more. I mean, maybe not a ton, but he's on the 15-day IL. So, and then you look at some of these other guys, and I mean, they've even had some guys overperforming a little bit. So, um, I'm definitely very definitely I would be very worried if I was a Yankees fan with especially the fact that the Rays and the Blue Jays are both teams. I don't know if the Orioles are going to keep up what they've done so far, but the Rays and the Blue Jays are both teams who are going to be really good this year, and they're already. I mean, the Yankees have already dug like a 8.5 game hole in the division, so it's just going to be very tough to come back from that.
I'll tell you what this team reminds me of before I hand it over to you, Damien, for a thought. They remind me of the 2018, 2019 Cubs teams where you have your superstars, right? You had your 4 or 5 guys that have a well above average, stat line that carry the team. Then one of them goes down and all of a sudden the team can't hit, right? And the replacements aren't good. The bottom of the roster's not good. The line, the pitching is okay, but it just doesn't. It can't carry. It can't carry an offense that bad for that long. And those teams didn't win anything, so it's worrisome that the Yankees find themselves in this situation, and they better hope Judge gets healthy soon.
Yeah, I mean, we've been mentioning the problem with the Yankees for, I mean, even all the way back to the beginning of last year. We said if Judge and Stanton weren't going to be healthy to carry that offense, they weren't going to score, and if Cole didn't lead that pitching staff, they weren't going to pitch very well. And we came into this year and we kind of said, okay, you re-signed Aaron Judge, but what else did you do? You signed Carlos Rodon, but he still hasn't got onto a mound yet, and doesn't seem like he's going to be on a mound anytime soon. So it is very worrisome for the Yankees. They have a lot of players that you don't feel very confident into stepping up into the plate. We'll see what Harrison Bader. He had a really good postseason last year. Looked pretty decent in his time with the Yankees. He just got activated, I believe, today for the first time this season. So maybe that's a little bit of a boost. And obviously not going to replace Aaron Judge, but maybe it's just a little bit more consistently, especially defensively out in center field. Maybe that'll help a little bit. But, Baltimore's been really surprising so far, off to a 19-9 start. I really like to see that. I mean, we kind of got onto them after not doing much more to improve this year, or even at the deadline last year, kind of selling off a little bit. And they've really came out and kind of just backed it up. And it's even with people like Gunnar Henderson struggling, who we thought was going to be a big part of what they were going to be this year. So I do like that. Toronto being where they're at, I think they can feel very fortunate right now because they have 3 starting pitchers who have been downright awful so far to start this year.
So is George Springer and Dalton Varsho. Both of them have been bad.
Yeah.
And Springer's had some weird luck. He's got really good, really hard hit balls, but hasn't gotten the hits to fall. And then he's also been sick, and he's also been hit on the hand by a pitch. Springer's going to come around, but like
I
Bo
wonder
Bichette
which
is
player David has on his fantasy team, if anyone's wondering.
Springer's. Hey, I kept track of it, but Bo Bichette's playing insanely well right now. Matt Chapman's playing insanely well right now. Vlad Jr. is playing insanely well right now, and then Whit Merrifield's having a bit of a renaissance as well. I mean, their team is really strong in the center of the order, especially once those other guys get going. Right, I think it's just a matter of time for both
Yeah.
Varsho and Springer.
Yeah, and just to point out with them, I think you mentioned the lineup. Kevin Kiermaier's been a league average hitter. Like, if he's a league average hitter, he's like a all-star caliber player. I mean, he's because of his defense.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then, but if you look at their pitching staff, I mean, that's kind of been their downfall so far, to a certain level. And I'm definitely very, very, very worried about Alek Manoah and Chris Bassett. I wasn't very high on Alek Manoah to start with this year, and he's looked really, really bad so far. And Chris Bassett, the same thing. Like, I was honestly not that low on him, but he's looked really rough so far. But I will say one thing that's been pretty nice for them, and the results haven't showed up quite yet. Jose Barrios has looked close to what we were hoping he might be with the Blue Jays. His ERA is high still, but the peripherals, some of the analytics on his pitches and his pitch types have looked pretty good. And there's some thought that perhaps he might be turning a corner. He's got a very low left on base percentage. Some of the sequencing has been bad for him, and his batting average on balls in play is extremely high. So I think that we might start to see Jose Barrios kind of, if he can continue to have the same process he's had so far. I think you might see his luck turn around, come going forward through this season. That would be a great development for them because they invested a lot in Jose Barrios.
Yeah, I'm not as worried on Manoa as you, or I don't know how you feel, David, but I mean, his walk rate has doubled so far this year. I think that's going to come down to earth. I mean, it's over double what his career average is. His home run rate is over almost double what his career average is. Like, those are going to come back down. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be the 2.24 ERA guy he was last year, but I don't think he's a 4.88 ERA guy. What he's saying this year either. But Barrios has looked a lot better for sure. Um, but
He's 25. I think he's got some. He's taking. He's taking a step back, but that doesn't mean his career's over. He's got a
no,
long way to go. A lot of adjustments to make. Major League Baseball's hard.
he's
I
had
I, I think he'll get
he
there.
he's had two good seasons before. I'm not basing his off his 31 innings so far this year. But looking over at the AL Central now, we have the Minnesota Twins leading this division at 17-12. We have the Cleveland Guardians at 14-15, the Detroit Tigers at 10-17, the Chicago White Sox at 8-21, and then the Kansas City Royals at 7-22. So I'll go ahead and start with David on this one. What has your thoughts been on the AL Central so far this year?
Yeah, I have two main thoughts, right? One is that Carlos Correa has not been performing yet, but the Twins have been outright electric. Sonny Gray is looking like a Cy Young candidate, and I think that's really impressive. He's shown flashes of that before, but this year he's been absolutely spectacular. Um, what I'm really surprised by in this division, though, is the White Sox. And I think that bears some discussion that we'll kind of get into. But the White Sox best player thus far has been Jake Berger. Luis Robert got benched the other day for not hustling out a ground ball. The clubhouse vibes of the White Sox are just absolutely miserable. Eloy Jimenez can't stay on the field, right? The power Elvis Andrews showed last year, that's gone. Um, this is a disaster of a team right now, and with 8 wins, I mean they're looking for a massive fire sale. Guys are going to be getting traded off. This is a worst case scenario for a team that maybe a year or two ago was viewed as a World Series favorite. Um, and it's a massive cliff that we've seen here in this first month. And there's a long way to go. They could still right the ship, but I mean the pitching hasn't been good, the hitting hasn't been good. The clubhouse vibes haven't been good. Nobody's, people are getting benched. It's a disaster all around. So Twins have been really good, even though some of their players aren't playing, but the White Sox have been really bad. So that's my kind of biggest takeaway from this AL Central thus far.
Yeah, I'm not totally in disagreement with you. I think that you look at this division so far, the Twins have been the best team here. Their pitching has been what we hoped it could be. And they just been really solid all around. I mean, the bats have been pretty good. Not they haven't really done anything at an elite level, but Joey Gallo has actually been pretty solid. His strikeout rates, I mean, it's still like astronomically high, but it's down from what it has been at times in his career. He's hit pretty well so far. Byron Buxton's hitting the ball well. Um, they are striking out a ton, but they've been pretty good offensively. But the pitching's kind of been the main thing. Like you mentioned, Sonny Gray, Pablo Lopez has been. I was kind of low on him coming in, and I think so far he's proven me wrong. Now he does have a 4 ERA, but the peripherals are really really good on him. And then I mean, you just look at their roster, their pitching, their bullpen's been really good. I think this is just a really 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 good team so far. Um, that they've definitely been easily the best team in this division. I mean, you look at Cleveland, and they've been all right. They just kind of they've got their Cleveland's got their limitations. They're just not going to hit for any power. I mean, they're just not going to, and that's going to be their issue, going forward. I mean, they've hit 17 home runs on the season. Like, I mean, there's teams that have more than triple that. So, pitching wise, missing Tristan McKenzie's hurt them a lot, but they gotta they gotta hit the ball better. And then, like you mentioned, the White Sox. I mean, the Luis Robert thing was kind of. There was some discussion about whether he was kind of injured. That he said they've said that he had a hamstring issue. I don't know how true that is, but there's a lot of issues there. They built a team out of paper thin. They built a team out of glass players and put in no depth. So it kind of sucks to see they had such a promising young core, but it's just. I mean, and some of their players just aren't performing that well either. That were like, I mean, like a Luis Robert is a guy who he's definitely not developed. He's got such great talent level that he gets away with it sometimes, but he's just, I mean, swings at everything, strikes out a ton, and I mean he's just not been all that great. Um, like you mentioned, when Jake Berger's been your best hitter, I mean that's or best player, that's pretty crazy. And then you look at I think it's been really interesting, and of course the Royals and the Tigers, we knew they were going to stink. So I mean, no surprises there. Although I will say the Royals are almost as bad as the A's. They're one win above the A's, which is shockingly bad. Like that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so running through it real quick. Oh, sorry, Dave, you want to go?
I was gonna say Bobby Witt Jr. has been bad, and Brady Singer has been horrible. He's been probably the worst pitcher in baseball,
Yeah.
given including the A's too, which is not expected. I did want to throw one more plus and one more minus in there from some of those teams. The Twins have gotten really good production from their hitters, despite a lack of. I think the guy that will come up and help them eventually is Edouard Julien. I think he was going to be really good and got sent back down again. I feel like the Twins have a huge ceiling on offense that they have not reached yet. So that team might actually be really good given the good pitching thus far. One negative for the Guardians is that Josh Bell has not played well at all. Kind of, signed to be their first baseman full time, but he has been dreadful. 202 batting average, negative WAR. He's walking a good bit, which is kind of what he does. But you'd want Josh Bell from the first half last year, and not the second half. And he's kind of playing like the second half Josh Bell. So, those impact players to this division have not really changed anything. I think the biggest one's going to be Pablo Lopez.
Well, I mean, for what I was going to say, the Twins do have some pitching depth concerns. Maeda went on the IL. Male, they just lost him to be shut down for at least 4 weeks. They did call it Bailey Ober, who was pretty solid last year. So they have that to deal with right now. But as far as the Guardians are concerned, it's not just Josh Bell or that. It literally the entire team is just not hitting. Josh Naylor's not hitting. Oscar Gonzalez isn't hitting. Med Rosario isn't even doing what he was doing last year. Andres Jimenez has taken a gigantic step back from what he was last year. Like that team's offense is just non-existent altogether, which is a really big concern. As far as the Royals are concerned, yes, they've been bad. They did lose Chris Bubich as well. I don't think we actually ended up mentioning that, but we mentioned he got injured, but ended up having to undergo Tommy John surgery, which was unfortunate. He was having a pretty good start to the season. So now he's lost for all of this season, probably into at least the All-Star break of next year. The White Sox, I think what they make 11 roster moves today.
Yeah.
It's insane. There's going to be a 12th one, I think, soon. But one positive note on the White Sox, Liam Hendriks, who had been dealing with cancer this offseason, is cancer free, and he, I believe, is supposed to go on rehab assignment starting tomorrow. So it shouldn't be all that long before we see Liam Hendriks back pitching in the major leagues, which is an incredible sign because, um, I think it was mid off season we found out, or even right before training camp we found out that he had, or spring training, that he had cancer there, and he's already beat it in remission. So that's great news to hear for sure.
Yeah, that is fantastic news. And one other note on the White Sox. I mean, and listen, I think the White Sox are really bad, and I think they're cooked, and I don't think they're going to come back. But you can come back from this. It is April, or just the end of April. Like I think the Nationals, when they won the World Series a few years ago, was like 19-31 or something. So, they're still, if you can figure something out quick, you especially in that division, like you're not totally just dead in the water. It's just you better figure it out quick at this point. So, and I don't think they will, but just kind of in general, like it's
Yeah.
not, it's still early. So
Yeah, their hope's going to have to be in that division for
yeah,
sure. But let's go ahead and jump over to the American League West, where we have the Texas Rangers leading this division at 17-11, the Houston Astros in second at 16-13, the Angels at 15-14, the Seattle Mariners at 12-16, and then Oakland bringing up the bottom of this division at 6-23. So I guess we start with Matt again on this one. What do you think of the AL West so far?
yeah, it's been a really interesting division. I think that I'm not surprised by the Texas Rangers being really good. I thought that if they were able to bring in all of their, bring in all these pieces in, I thought they were all really talented pieces they brought in, but they were veterans and they'd have to stay healthy, which up until very recently has been the case. The problem is that this week they finally got their first injury, and of course we know who it is, and Jacob DeGrom. It sounds like it's not going to be a long term thing. It sounds like he's just going to, maybe stay the minimum on the IL. It's not super serious, but, it's Jacob DeGrom, and we've seen this happen before with him. So, they're 17-11. They've been great. The offense has been really good. They have a plus 72 run differential. They're hitting. Josh Young has, one of those guys we talked about at the beginning of the season who was kind of a key to this team. He's been really solid for them. They've done this without Corey Seager. When Corey Seager comes back, you're adding like a guy who is, an all-star caliber, maybe even like a superstar caliber player to that lineup. So definitely very good. Very very good team, and I like what they've done so far. Houston's been kind of fine so far. Like they haven't been their normal selves. They've dealt with some players being out. They've weathered the storm while those players have been out. Like Altuve's missed the season so far. I don't think Michael Brantley's been healthy yet. And you look at their lineup. I mean, there's some holes there. Like you look at like they've been starting Dubon and they've been starting. Their center field situation's not fantastic. I mean, they've been okay there, but Martin Maldonado is kind of a black hole in the lineup. And then the rotation. I mean, Valdez is good, but Urquidy and Garcia have been a little bit up and down. So which is kind of not shocking, but I think they'll be fine. The Angels have been okay. They haven't played themselves out of the division yet, which is good to see. But team, I'm kind of worried about the Mariners. Because this is a very if Texas and the Angels, if they both stay like really competitive all year, Seattle's kind of got some issues, and I think that you look at their pitching staff having a couple injuries there. Robbie Ray got to miss the season, and then their lineup's just not all that great. So definitely interesting to look at. But we'll see. We'll see what happens here. I mean, it's a good this is a really good division. It's an underrated division. I don't think too many people are talking about it, but this is going to be an entertaining division to watch coming down, all season.
Yeah, worth noting that the MLB RBI leader resides in this division in Texas with Adolis Garcia, who's
Yeah.
been spectacular. You've also got Jordan Alvarez in this division as well. I didn't mention his name. Houston's also lost Luis Garcia and Jose Urquidy in the last week, so their already thin pitching depth is being tested once again. And then with Houston, Jose Abreu has been disastrous to this
Yeah.
point. To the point he looks, as his age finally, and um, it's definitely troublesome. I think the Houston team has a lot more warts than both the Angels and the Rangers at this point. And the Rangers did just lose their ace, DeGrom, but that's a team with Nathan Eovaldi, who's been absolutely fantastic. That may be one of the best signings of the offseason because Eovaldi's not on a big contract. He's not making much money, but he's pitching like an ace for them right now. And with DeGrom out, I mean that he's going to have to lead that rotation. You've also got the Angels where Hunter Renfroe has been absolutely spectacular. 7 home runs early. Um, that Angels team with obviously Trout and Otani have been doing very Trout and Otani things, but Hunter Renfroe has proven to be really good. The biggest problem for the Angels has been that Logan O'Hoppe is now out for like 4 to 6 months, and he had a 141 WRC plus. So their catcher is gone. He had been performing really well. Also worth noting that Zach Neto, who was a draft pick last year, 2022 draftee, already made it up to the majors and was hitting 250 before up to tonight. So he's certainly looked the part. I think he was the 13th overall pick for the Angels. So he's come up and been really good. Also want to throw Brent Rooker in there for this division, right? In terms of players performing, man, he has been spectacular. I missed the week where I was going to pick him as the player of the week, but I think he's got 9 homers so far in this season. He's just been superb. So, shout out to Brent Rooker. I'm glad he's having a good year, and I think, for all the down stuff in Oakland, I think between him and Mason Miller, they do have some guys who are turning heads there, which is nice.
Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder there, but I was going to ask, how many games will Oakland have won if they didn't have Brent Rooker on the roster this year? Yeah,
2.
You think he's for a four already?
Yeah, something to that effect, man. He's been really good.
Yeah. And one other thing with the Angels too, that their bullpen has been abysmal. So it's been really bad, and also the Tyler Anderson signing's looking not great right now. He's kind of looked like he. So I am worried about their, once again, as we say just about every year, I'm worried about their pitching depth. Although Otani and Sandoval and Detmers have been pretty good, and I worry about their pitching depth. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Taylor Ward, who really had broke out last year, has not been good this year either.
Yeah.
So I know he had a big homer today, but the Angels, there's been a lot of question marks so far for them. But it's we said this division that had 4 teams that could be competitive in it, and that we wouldn't be surprised if any of those 4 teams really were able to step up. And Texas has been the team to really do that, and Seattle's been the team to be disappointing so far. Seattle, they haven't got much out of Teoscar Hernandez, who was supposed to be their, one of their big moves this year. He's really struggled as well, but we're finally starting to see the breakout of Jared Kelenic, which is really exciting to see. But they got to figure out what to do with that middle infield position. I know Colton Wong's kind of been a little bit better recently, but there was a time, I think a couple weeks ago, where he had like 3 hits on the year still. So it's been really bad from that point.
Yeah, and on that team too, like you look at Julio Rodriguez, and you need him to be superstar Julio Rodriguez, and not just really good player Julio Rodriguez for that team to really click. That's what really made them click last year, was that he played at like a superstar level. And I mean, he's been fine, but he's striking out a lot, 110 WRC plus, like he's been fine instead of superstar, and they need him to be superstar. So it's definitely another thing to kind of look at there.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, let's go ahead and jump over to the NL East now, where we have the Atlanta Braves leading this division at 19-10. We got the Marlins and Mets tied for second at 16-13 apiece. Philadelphia is at 15-15, and then Washington at 10-18 to round up this division. So, David, how is the NL East stacking up so far?
I might not even be the right one to talk about this, but early
It's
on,
fine.
it's looking like chalk, right? Like this is kind of what you'd expect, other than maybe the slight struggles for the Phillies. They're only 1.5 games behind second place right now, so I don't even know that you'd call it struggles. Trey Turner has not been particularly good thus far, but he's going to pick it up at some point, right? He's coming off of the World Baseball Classic high, where he was, maybe the best player there. So, a bit of a slump. If you inserted those numbers into the season, he'd be having a stellar season. So it's early enough. Brandon Marsh looks great, but I do think that the Phillies, as they get Bryce Harper back, they're in a position where um, they need to make some noise, right? They need to get in there and get back ahead of the Marlins and start to challenge, because it could get away from them very quickly if uh, you know they continue to have some of these struggles. Then I look at the Braves. That team is so good. I envision that the Braves end up running away with this division. I think it's probably not as close as it was last year at all. Um, they just seem like they're a better team than the Mets right now. The Mets haven't had Scherzer because of the suspension. They haven't had Verlander yet, who both of them are coming back this week. But even Scherzer, when he was pitching, wasn't nearly as good as he was last year. So, I do think the Braves are in a point where they're going to be well ahead of the rest of this division. And then the Marlins have been impressive so far, right? Luis Arias looks really, really good. Um, Jorge Soler's been back, been hitting for power. Garrett Cooper's been pretty good. So, the Marlins have managed to make some good moves, right? But then we were talking about it before the show started. Sandy Alcantara has been really bad. So, for all the positives for a lot of these teams, you also have some major negatives, right? I mean, you know, Alcantara is the kind of guy who the Marlins need to be their ace. They need somebody like that because their rotation is so volatile. They have such, high walk guys. They needed Alcantara to eat those innings, keep the bullpen, healthy. That's what happened last year, right? And they won them, a solid number of games. I want to say 75, but with the offense finally performing, with a guy like Arias leading, who could totally hit 400. I mean, the way he's playing, he could hit 400. So it's just, I don't know, man. This division looks like a Braves division, but yeah, the Marlins being 16-13 to this point is a very good start for them, and I'm very interested because I just watched them play all last weekend, and the Cubs couldn't do anything with them.
Yeah, so I definitely have some thoughts on this division. First thing is that the Braves are very good. There are some question marks for me though. The bullpen hasn't been all that good. They haven't had Raisel Iglesias yet, but some of the key additions they made, you're kind of hoping for Joe Jimenez to not be terrible, which he has looked terrible. His velocity's way down. Kirby Yates hasn't looked good at all. We were kind of hoping he might come back a little bit from his injuries and be. I wasn't expecting him to be the 2019 Kirby Yates, but I was hoping he would be at least a solid reliever, and he's been really really rough looking. But that they look fine. The lineup's been pretty good. There's some problems, at the bottom of the lineup, but they've looked really good so far. The starting pitching staff's been awesome. Fried looks fantastic. Strider looks fantastic. Charlie Morton hasn't looked great, but he's looked a little bit better his last few starts. Bryce Elder's come up and been really, really good. His Statcast page is kind of awful, and I'm a little worried that he's not gonna sustain it. But so far, I mean, his results have been fantastic. So I think the Braves definitely have looked like the most complete team here. You look at the Mets, and there's a couple different ways to look at them so far. Like they're 16-13, so they haven't had a bad start. The lineup's been pretty good. The thing about their rotation is that you look at it one way is you say, well, they've been missing Scherzer and Verlander and Quintana, which has hurt them a lot. But you look at it another way and you say, well, the Mets signed a bunch of 40-year-old pitchers, and this is what the problem with signing 40-year-old pitchers is. So Scherzer didn't look good when he was pitching. Verlander hasn't pitched yet. We don't know what he's going to look like. But they did have more depth this year in their rotation than I think people kind of realized. So they can always call on a guy like Tyler McGill. One other guy, Kodai Senga, hasn't been very good. He's just been he's got some good stuff, but he's walking guys like crazy. So definitely some worries for their pitching staff. And the lineup doesn't hit the ball very hard. It's kind of the same thing as it was last year. You kind of worry a little bit about them having a lot of power in their lineup. There were times I watched the Mets over the weekend in the few games they actually played, and there were times where they kept getting on base, but they couldn't drive runs in because they weren't hit for power like at all. So they kept getting two guys on, and then they just couldn't quite get over the hump. And then you look at Philly, and it's another team that they're in a similar spot, like to the Mets. They just haven't won quite as many games. They get Bryce Harper back, which is going to help them an absolute ton, assuming that he's fully healthy. But I think that the worry for Philly is like the starting pitching's been not great, and Aaron Nola has looked awful so far. Like he's just not been good. And I mean, the rest of their starting pitching, I mean, Bailey Falter, Taiwan Walker, I mean, they've just been pretty meh. The bullpen's not very good. Tried to tell everybody their bullpen wasn't going to be good. The lineup's been really good so far, but they have run a super high batting average on balls in play. Kind of like Brandon Marsh has been good, but 464 BABIP. And then one note on the Marlins, in their games they have won 10 games. They have 10 one-run games on their record. They've won all 10 of them. I don't think they're going to keep this up. Their lineup has no power other than the occasional Jorge Soler home run. And their pitching staff I really like Jesus Luzardo. I think Alcantara is going to be fine, but like Jazz Chisholm's been bad on the hitting side too. He's striking out 36% of the time. But I mean, I like the rest of their pitching staff. Like I think Trevor Rogers had Tommy John, didn't he?
No, he didn't get Tommy John, but he's going to be out for a few weeks. Yeah.
Right, he's out for a while. I remembered seeing elbow, so that's why I must have assumed. But I mean, their pitching staff's not very deep. Like they've got a couple good guys. Luzardo, Alcantara, like I said, is going to be fine, but they're not very deep in that pitching staff. And then they're like I said, the lineup's just not very good. I mean, they're better than they were. Luis Arias is hitting really well. I mean, he's got a 452 BABIP, but he doesn't strike out like at all, so that's great. And then, but I mean, they just don't have many guys that hit the ball hard. So
BABIP doesn't matter for a guy like Arias either. Like
he's not going to keep up.
BABIP,
he can maybe keep up 380, but he's not going to keep up 450. But I mean, he's good though.
That guy is the best contact hitter in baseball.
He really is.
It is unbelievable to watch, dude. He's hard to get out.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. He really is. He's a great hitter. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying he's not going to hit 450 this year. Like, but he's really good.
He's a month down.
So
imagine if there was one idiot on this show that said he was worried about Luis Arias coming into this season. I don't know who that could possibly be. Yeah. Definitely not the guy who picked Blake Snell and Jose Barrios to win Cy Young awards before.
Barrios actually has been good.
But I picked him last year.
I
picked him last year.
There it is.
Yeah. So, and the same year I picked Snell, Lindor to be the MVP. But hey, I got Cy Young right last year with Sandy. All right, leave me alone. But no, this division, I think it's like David said. I think it's been about status quo outside of the Marlins, being up there. But that has to do with their 10-0 and one-run games. I think we kind of knew it was going to be Atlanta, and they've kind of done this without getting a lot for Michael Harris, who was a real breakout guy for them last year as well. Although they've added Sean Murphy's
been insanely good.
All of them guys. So,
my God, yeah. For free.
Yeah, basically.
What free? Contreras has been really good for the Brewers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't even go to the
talk
team.
about it. Well, I was gonna
Okay.
say he was the main key in it, but I will say we were gonna jump to it next time. But his framing numbers have looked really good so far this year as
Yeah,
well. He's turned
they
into a
have.
pretty good defender. But sticking with the NL East, at least for now, the Mets only being 3 games back, not having got anything from Verlander yet, with Senga, with Scherzer, having been not the greatest. I think there's a little bit of room for what could possibly be there as well. And then Philly, for all of their struggles, they're getting their captain back tonight. They're getting Bryce Harper back. And his not even what he brings to just that lineup, which we already know what he can do at the plate. It's just having that guy back in there every single day with the club in the clubhouse. Like he just brings a different vibe and an aura to this club that immediately makes you better. So I'm going to be really interested to see what his return does for this Phillies, not only the lineup, but just the team in general. Because morale is going to be a lot higher when you get an MVP back into that lineup. But I think only 160 days after undergoing Tommy John surgery, which is absolutely insane to actually think about. But yeah, and then we all knew Washington was going to be bad anyways. But let's go ahead and jump over to the National League Central then and start with the Pittsburgh Pirates at 20-9. We have the Milwaukee Brewers at 18-10, the Chicago Cubs at 15-13, the Cincinnati Reds at 12-17, and then the Cardinals bring at the bottom of the division at 10-19. So Matt, what do you think of the NL Central so far?
I think it's been interesting. The Pirates being insanely good has been shocking to say the least. But I mean, and there's some ways the Pirates have been like legitimately really good. I mean, they've gotten great contributions from guys who you feel like like Brian Reynolds has been like back to 2021 Brian Reynolds. That was like a 5 or 6 win player. I mean, you've got Jack Sawinski who showed some promise last year. I don't think people are talking about him like he's this guy who they never heard of. He was pretty good for them last year. Has been really good for them this year. You got Andrew McCutchen hitting really well so far. 120 WRC plus for him. This has been a good team so far. The pitching staff, you look at them as I'm not fully sold, but I mean, David Bednar's insane out of their bullpen, but I mean, Roansy Contreras, I'm not sold on. Like he's got a really good FIP, but he's also not given up a home run yet. He doesn't get the ball on the ground very much. I think that's probably going to change. Mitch Keller's been really good for them, which has been nice. Kind of continuing what he did at the end of the year last year. But I don't fully trust that. Like Vince Velasquez has a 3.06 ERA. Like I don't fully trust their rotation right now, but I think they're a good story, and they're gonna stick. They're kind of like the Orioles were last year. I don't really trust them, but I think they're probably good enough to hang around to a certain level. Um, and I do trust the Brewers a little bit more. I think they've been pretty solid at the plate compared to what people would kind of expect from them. I think that they've been like kind of league average at the plate ish. They're a great defensive team, and I think you look at their pitching, and they've really missed a lot of time from guys too. So, they've lost. They've had Corbin Burns out some, hadn't performed fantastic yet. I definitely don't think he's going to be. I'm a tiny bit worried about Corbin Burns, but I think he's going to be fine. And Brandon Woodruff's missed a lot of time, so I don't know when he's coming back, but he's been out a lot. So they've kind of weathered the storm with those guys out. And then I'll let David talk more about the Cubs, but I do think the Cubs are better than I expected them to be. I don't fully trust them to be like this good at the plate. They have a pretty high BABIP. They've got some guys who, I mean, Dansby Swanson's got a 400 BABIP. Like, he's not going to sustain that. Like Ian Happ 380. But they've got some guys, Cody Bellinger has really looked a lot better at the plate. We'll see if he keeps it up. But so far, he's been really good. And that's, I wasn't, I didn't say that was completely out of the realm of possibility, but I wasn't expecting that. But I do still I don't fully trust their pitching staff. I mean, I've watched Drew Smiley a lot. He was a Brave a couple years ago. He's been great so far this year. Don't think he keeps this up. Like, I'm a little worried about their pitching depth. The bullpen, hadn't been great. So I think they're really good, and I think they put themselves in a position to probably be above a 500 team maybe. And you never know with this division because like the Cardinals have been awful, and that's kind of the team everyone's kind of expecting to be at least first or second. I mean, you could have picked the Brewers, but the Cardinals you weren't expecting them to be this bad, and I mean, there's a lot of issues there. The pitching staff is we all had questions about their pitching staff. I don't think we could have envisioned it being quite this horrible. Like I think we kind of expected at least like Miles Michaelis would be fine and Jordan Montgomery would be fine, which I think Jordan Montgomery's actually been fine. But I mean, they've been like, oof, that pitching staff has been really bad. Hopefully, I mean, they get Wainwright back soon, which I don't know if that's actually going to help them that much. I mean, I guess he might be better than Jake Woodford, but they have a 4.56 ERA as a team. It has not helped them that they had Jordan Walker playing in the outfield. He's probably on his own contributed like half a run to their ERA. He's been so bad defensively. I think that putting him back in AAA is going to help them out. The bullpen hasn't been great, so I mean, this division's kind of wide open for me. I think that I could envision the Cardinals coming back, but I mean, I think between the Brewers and the Cubs and the Pirates, like somebody unexpected could win this division. And I think if I had to put a bet on it today, I'd probably bet on the Brewers. I think their pitching will get healthy and come back. But man, there's three teams at this top of this division who legitimately have or four teams in this division who now, especially with the Pirates having all these wins in the bank, have a shot to be there at the end. So it should be very interesting down the stretch.
I will say the Cubs' depth is very good. The problem is that the Cubs are not accessing the depth. That's the biggest issue right now, is that they are not removing guys who are not performing. They're continuing to chuck them out there, right? Michael Fulmer's blown 2 or 3 games. He's still in the bullpen, right? They haven't gone and gotten some of their AAA talent. They've got a bunch of it. The Iowa Cubs are scoring like the most runs in baseball. They get 10 runs a game basically. It's insane. Christopher Morel's got 11 homers in Iowa in the first month, and they've played less games than the major leaguers thus far. Matt Mervis is a 400 on base percentage. Cubs are running out Eric Hosmer and Edwin Rios, who they don't even trust to pinch hit in a grand. They don't even trust Edwin Rios to hit with the bases loaded, right? And his whole thing is power, and it's like, why are you using a roster spot on this guy, right? Like the Cubs are not performing well on the margins, and it's really bothering me. Because they're giving away games. They give away at least 2 games to the Marlins, if not more, right? In that one runs, kerfuffle of the whole weekend, right? Where the Cubs lose 3 1-run games. But, they lost today to the Nationals. You can't be losing the Nationals, right? But, they're losing because they're not putting the best 26 players on the field. That really bugs me, right? Pirates are calling up young guys, right? They're giving Jack Sawinski an opportunity, right? Roansy Contreras is getting an opportunity in the rotation. He's taking advantage of it. He's doing amazing. You'll look at the Brewers, who have somehow transformed William Contreras into a good defensive catcher, right? The Brewers have been really good too. They've been doing what I expected the Brewers to do. I picked the Brewers to win this division. The Cardinals are, I hope, a disaster of a team. I just don't foresee it continuing, right? Nolan Arenado's been slow to start this year, right? And we had the Tyler O'Neill drama and all that stuff. So, I imagine the Cardinals get back to it. But again, it doesn't surprise me, right, that the Cardinals are not as good as expected, because I didn't pick them, and I feel good about that right now. But I think this is a wide open division, right? I think especially the Pirates can win it, if they are able to keep up some of these performances, right? Like Connor Joe's been really good. Even Carlos Santana has been useful, and McCutchen, we talked about a bunch. He's been really good so far as well. The Pirates can do this, but so could the Brewers and so can the Cubs. And so I think the most aggressive team, with their young players, with their depth, with their ability to withstand injury, the most aggressive team on the trade deadline, because all of these teams have really good prospects. You look at the Brewers, have maybe the best prospect in baseball in Chourio, right? And if Ohtani comes available or someone to that effect, right, there's going to be a bidding war. If any of these teams get a high talented player, not necessarily Ohtani, because the Angels are still in it right now, but if high talent comes available, right, the teams in this division have the talent to go get better players at the deadline. All of them do. So this thing is, if this thing is as wide open as it seems, this division is going to come down to September, and it's going to come down to every game mattering from here on in, which just makes the Cubs throwing away games, the past week that much more frustrating.
Yeah, one note on you're talking about the trade deadline. Eventually, I think that there's that everyone's talking about Ohtani and the Angels, and I really don't think they're going to be out of it. Like I think they might be kind of looking like they might be on the outside looking into the playoffs, but I think they're going to be close enough to where they don't like sell Ohtani. But I will say that if the White Sox continue what they're doing right now, like they have some players who could really kickstart a rebuild. I mean, because I'm really kind of down on Luis Robert, but and but he really could be a guy that you could build a centerpiece of. Like we can go get a bunch of prospects for him still, and Dylan Cease as well as a guy who. So that could be a couple guys that you look at. Maybe a team like the Cardinals could definitely use some Dylan Cease. I mean,
or even
so
Giolito.
I
or
despise
Giolito.
this, but you're
Yeah.
right.
I mean, and I wouldn't be shocked to see that happen if we got in. And honestly, that might be a move that if the White Sox are as bad as they are, the Cardinals could get desperate and say we've got aging veteran players in our lineup, Arenado, Goldschmidt. Like we need to go get a pitcher now, and they could overpay for one of those types of guys. Like if the White Sox continue to be as bad as they are now, like they could do it early. So we'll see what happens, but definitely an interesting thought there.
Yeah, so obviously we know Pittsburgh's been really good. Milwaukee, even through all of the injuries that they've had with Garrett Mitchell being out for the year, even Sal Frelick, who they called up, he had shoulder surgery. He's out 6 to 8 weeks, I believe, as well. They've even Corbin Burns hasn't looked like the Corbin Burns we know. They're still only a game and a half out of this. Like they can easily make a run for this. The Cubs, they're about a 500 team. I mean, we kind of said that they had the potential to be a 500 team this year if everything went right. I think they've seen a lot of the comeback of Cody Bellinger so far has looked great. Dansby's looked pretty good for them as well. Smiley being really, really good. They just got Seiya back, so if he's able to get back to the flashes that we saw of him last year, obviously Stroman's going to be what Stroman is. They're a team we thought they could be 500. If they get aggressive at the deadline, maybe they can compete for this division at the end of the day. Cincinnati, I think they've been a little bit better than we would have expected so far. They've got some nice performances from a guy like Nick Senzel. And overall, I think the Cardinals, I just watched them this weekend. They got swept by LA. And really, like, that offense just looks so discombobulated right now. Like, I think the only guy that was coming into the series, the only guy hitting over like 250 was Goldschmidt. I want to say, I think Edman had a really good series. I think he's up to like 260 or something like that now. But just basically, like, Arenado hadn't been hitting. O'Neill hadn't been hitting. Carlson obviously hasn't been hitting. Like, Brendan Donovan, who was really good for them last year, wasn't hitting as well. Like, I think they've just been struggling altogether on top of, the pitching staff issues that they have already had. Flaherty got lit up. I think Woodford only went like 4 innings. It's just, they have Matt's got lit up in the first inning today. I think he gave it 4 or 5 in the first inning. So this team has a lot more talent. If they get Arenado and Goldschmidt back to doing what they can do, the offensive production you're gaining at catcher from Wilson Contreras, although you're losing a little bit on the defensive side. But you need guys like Tyler O'Neill. You need Brendan Donovan. You need Dylan Carlson to find what he had a couple years ago. Like even Jordan Walker wasn't awful offensively, but he was bad defensively. I'm still on the thing of you just got to let that guy figure it out in the majors. But I think the team has enough talent there. They just have to figure something out and get something going the right way. I don't know what they got to do if they got to do something.
I'll say some of it's also just a little bit of a sequencing funk because they have a 107 WRC plus as a team, and they've been they haven't been awful like just individual hitters at the plate. Nolan Gorman's been really. It's just I guess it's just sequencing. Like they seem to just kind of be one of those teams that right now they're just kind of getting in their head when they got runners in scoring position and stuff and not getting guys in. So
yeah, like it just seemed very weird. Like they weren't very Cardinals like.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Ollie Marmol didn't seem to. It was a couple times where they were showing him in the dugout, just like getting into players' faces, and I don't know. I wonder if that clubhouse culture isn't as
Yeah,
good this year or something with Marmol.
It sure
definitely.
it sure didn't look that way, that's for sure thus
With
That
far.
that
So
feel like
with
it has been. Yeah.
yeah, especially with the whole Tyler O'Neill situation. I wonder
one
about that.
thing I just noticed as I was kind of looking, looks to me like the Cardinals have been the worst base running team in baseball.
Yeah, they've been
Yeah,
awful.
yeah,
But
it's
So
been bad.
that's something as well. But
Who knew somebody could be worse at something than the Oakland A's? But
yeah,
here we are.
here we are.
Let's go ahead and transition over to the National League West now, where we have the Dodgers leading the division at 17-13, Arizona in second at 16-13, San Diego in third at 16-14, San Francisco at 11-17, and then Colorado bringing up the rear of this division at 9-20. So, David, thoughts on the NL West so far?
Yeah, the reports of the Dodgers' demise were exaggerated, I believe. Maybe not necessarily on our end. We did mention the Dodgers are still going to be good. They're not going to win 100 games, but that's a good team, man. You know, having watched them, the Cubs played all their games against the Dodgers already, and man, that's a tough team, dude. Every game feels like a playoff game. It's just a tough team, tough atmosphere to play against. You know, the offense looks really good. Obviously, James Outman is having a spectacular start to the rookie year. The whiff rate is a little bit scary, but with the way he's performing and the defense he's playing, I don't think it's gonna something to be worried about right now. You just let that guy go up there and swing the bat. You know, they are now weathering an injury for JD Martinez, who had clubbed some homers already. But they just got Will Smith back. I think this is a very complete team. Even Julio Urias has struggled, and they're still leading this division, and that's including a number of very close games that they've played against really tough competition thus far. Where they've just swept the Cardinals, right? They've played the Cubs, they've played the Diamondbacks, who are second, and then I just reports of the Dodgers demise greatly exaggerated. They're going to be who this division runs through, I think, this season, and I'm going to go ahead and call it. I think this is a 3-horse race. The Diamondbacks and the Padres are the only ones with a chance. I'm kicking the Giants and the Rockies to the curb. I think it's there, but the Diamondbacks have a chance, and we did discuss that in our pre